All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. More follow-ups from the Dallas Cowboys' first preseason game. We got some more news, more reporting highlighting the Cowboys' strategy, some impressive rookies. We got some data to get into. Very interesting stuff as this Cowboys final 53 and what this team will look like for 2025 is slowly coming more into focus. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Normally I start with this channel on, our stat of the day, chart of the day, but fortunately today our stats, our charts have to do with the last preseason game. So let's get going right here with this very first post. This is from PFF. This is the Cowboys' top defensive grades from the preseason game. And we're just going to go through the list here. You can see on the far right, their overall defensive grade per PFF, and you can see the players, of course, they're on the left. And I think the thing that jumps out to me right away is obviously you see Israel Mukuamu with that interception. PFF so heavily weights takeaways, especially time of the game. If you have a halfway decent game and then get an interception, you're going to be a bonkers grader. That's just how their system works, right? Good or bad, that's just how it is. Same thing with quarterback play, right? A lot of times, if you just don't turn the football over very much, you'll have a pretty high quarterback grade. That's just, again, this is how their data works. It's not good or bad. You just have to understand that going into it when you look at grades. A guy can have a really great game, but if he forces no takeaways as a defender, then he's capped, right, in terms of performance. But anyway, you go down this list here, and I think there's a lot to be excited about. So let's start with Zion Childress there, second from the top of the 77.0 overall defensive grade. I mean, look, we talked about him yesterday. The coaches have been very high on him. They've all through training camp. Again, he has just proven he's a really good football player. He lines up all over the place, very versatile. We saw it on film in terms of what he did for the Cowboys in the preseason game, that big tackle for loss on the jet sweep. But the data from PFF kind of supports everything we're seeing as well. I love what I call corroborating evidence, right? There are guys that pass the eye test. There are guys that get rave reviews from the coaches. There are guys that get rave reviews from reporters. And then we throw analytics into it as well. We're talking every single box being checked here. The Cowboys have pulled off their steal of the draft. This is the steal. It's Zion Childress. I think we can all, at this point, agree to that. Barring some steep fall off or some injury, which God forbid none of us is hoping for, I think we've got the steal right here in this undrafted free agent. And one of the steals of the cycle, right? We talk about other safeties and other defensive backs. There are some good ones out there. Nick Amonwori for Seattle, Xavier Watts for Atlanta. But if you look at the data and you look at the film, right here, Childress outperformed both of those guys, stud safeties, guys that came out of college with high expectations. Again, I'm not saying Childress will have a better career. Maybe he will. I'm not saying he will have a worse career. Maybe he won't. I'm just saying at this point in time, he is one of the best rookie defensive backs, rookie safeties, rookie, utility knife defenders that we see in the NFL right now. An undrafted free agent who came into camp as a camp body, was a good player in Kentucky, but far from great, lot of experience. He is highlighting at a high level why the Cowboys have been just blown away from him all over free agency, all over training camp, as an undrafted free agent. Again, he's doing great things. Moving down the list there, Maris Leofau. Look, we talked about it yesterday. Leofau, based on the footage, he's one of those guys that looked like he really didn't belong in a good way. He looked like a first string, second string guy playing with third stringers, and the data shows that out. Again, he graded out with a 73.7 grade. And one of those things, if you don't have a turnover or takeaway, or you don't get a tackle for loss or things like that, that PFF really love, your grade will be capped. Same thing with the number 4 guy on the list, Donovan Ezraku, who is going to have a film review coming out hopefully this afternoon, so stay tuned for that. That's going to be on this channel. But Ezraku, again, very good day, despite having no sacks, no forced fumbles, no recover fumbles. Anytime you can grade in the 70s or high 60s without having an impact play, a touchdown on offense, a takeaway or sack or tackle for loss on defense, that's usually a really, really good sign because it's so heavily weighted to that. One of the reasons Micah Parsons, for example, grades out so well is because obviously he's a great player, but because he kind of has a two ways to go about it, right? He's very productive. He gets a lot of sacks and things like that, but he also looks good on film. He wins a lot of one-on-one reps and does his job very well. There's a lot of guys that do their job very well but don't get a lot of stats. Think the traditional run stuffing nose tackle, and their grades will be so capped, right? There are a lot of guys that are heavily productive, but play to play, they'll have some bad mixed in there. I think like T.J. Watt for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he fills up the stat sheet as a stat filling machine, but because play to play, he'll have a play where he gets a sack and a forced fumble, which is an A plus, and then he'll have 3 plays where he does nothing and gets shut down. So it kind of evens out there from a PFF perspective. Right here, what we're seeing from Leofau, Ezraku, these are guys that made basically no big plays, did a good game, though. You look at the film, they did their jobs at a high level. Leofau, again, getting a lot of praise from the Cowboys coaching staff. I think he's going to be a big part of this Cowboys front seven going forward to start the season. And obviously, Ezraku beginning his career with a good start. As we expected, he's had a good camp. And then on the next guy on this list, Troy Pride Jr. Good to see the top graded cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys. Look, I think Troy Pride is going to have a very interesting situation set up for him. And I think when you look at where the Cowboys are defensively, the early part of the season with Diggs out, with Savone Revel out, obviously, and Kalen Carson up in question, defensive back depth is really, really hurting. And a lot of people have been asking, well, who's going to be the number 3 corner? How is that all going to shake out? And I don't think it's going to be that simple. I think going into at least the first month of the season, as we wait for Diggs to return from injury, I think the Cowboys are going to have a bunch of different linebacker, corner, safety packages. So, for example, in a base defense, if they're going up against a team in 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers, and it's 1st and 10, they'll have a set of linebackers and corners and safeties. But if it's the same personnel grouping, but it's 3rd and 8, they'll have a different set. So, for example, on 1st and 10, they may have, say, Sanborn and Murray. Maybe they have Bland on the outside, Elam on the outside, and maybe Troy Pride Jr., for example, as a slot corner, right? Or maybe they have Childress in there as a slot corner in the situation to be a little more balanced against the run. But if it's 3rd down situations, they may move Bland in the slot. They may move Troy Pride on the outside corner, do like a cover 2, split the 2 deep safeties, let Bland work in the middle of the field, and maybe their linebackers in those 3rd down situations include a guy like Maris Leofau, who's much more of a playmaking kind of guy, a guy who can do a bunch of different things the way maybe a Sanborn can, who's more of a traditional 1st down linebacker, right? That's just an example. And I think that's what the Cowboys are going to do the first part of the season. That's why I think it's really good we're seeing linebackers, Sanborn, Shamar James, who I'm going to get to in a second, who had a really good day. Film review coming from him. I really like him. Of course, Leofau looking good. Murray, new to camp because of going on paternity leave, so obviously he missed because of the birth of his child, but he's going to do some good things. He's going to fill a key role. And a big part of this, and it's unfortunate, but if you look at the Cowboys situation defensively as we get ready for the start of the season, it's kind of a mirage because everyone focuses on Parsons and his absence, and it's important. But the reality is one of their top stars, Trayvon Diggs, is hurt, right? Another of their top stars, DeMarvion Overshown, is also hurt. So the defense to start the season and the defense that's going to be there for the first 10, 11 games isn't really what the defense is supposed to be, right? And injuries happen, I get it, but it feels like this Cowboys defense, even if you go back to 2023 when Diggs got hurt right before the Arizona Cardinals game and then Vanderlay got hurt, I believe, after the 49ers game, even that season, you were like, man, this defense, the way it ended up, that's not what it was supposed to be. 2024, it definitely wasn't that way. It looks like 2025 could be heading that way, well, at least to start. Hopefully by the end of the season, it will be the group that we want it to be. But again, when you look at these guys, the top performers, a lot of good data there. I will bring your attention to the bottom 4 there. You see Keeman Hall, not a good day from him. I think this was an opportunity. He didn't step up nearly as well as, say, Troy Pride did, at least based on the data. Mozzie Smith was a total disappointment. He's on his way out of the football. He's on his way out of Dallas, probably out of football, if I'm being totally honest. And Andrew Booth Jr., I hate rooting against the kid. I'm not rooting against the kid, but he just can't play. He just can't get it done, and it's so disappointing for him. I hope he figures out, maybe he turns it around, but he just looked bad in broadcast footage, looked bad on film, and looked bad on data too, right? It's sort of similar. It's sort of the anti-Zion Childress who looks good everywhere and then looks bad everywhere. And that's Andrew Booth. And look, I hope he turns it around, but I just don't see it. All right, let's look into the versus all receivers in coverage. You can say Mukuamu had a really good grade. Again, an interception helps that. But again, you see the top 3 guys. You see Leofau against all the receivers, like combined from the Rams that they covered. Leofau, Childress, Pride, pretty solid stuff. You can see Andrew Booth again at the cornerback position near the bottom. You can see Robert Rochelle, who got hurt, got beat when he pulled his hamstring. So that's kind of an unfair grading. He got absolutely just waxed a couple times in coverage, but he was playing hurt. He had tweaked his hamstring and tried to play through it. That grade right there, I kind of hate that. Like, I understand why PFF does that, but that's where the data can sometimes be a little misleading. And what they say, stats are for losers and liars, is kind of the old saying that old head coaches like. Because Rochelle basically pulled his hamstring, got absolutely beat on a big play, and so PFF's going to bury his grade for it. I'm not saying he's a great player, but again, it's one of those things like, well, he got hurt, right? And you're crushing his grade because of it. Again, I'm not saying he played well. I'm just making that point. So when you see stats and numbers, it's important to understand that kind of thing. So again, I kind of like what those top 4 guys right there, right? Leofau, Childress, and Pride. I think that's what we're going to see, 3 guys right there. Obviously, Mukuamu is going to play a role in this defense and special teams as well. I think those really top 4 are going to be a big part of this defense come regular season time, at least until we get a little more health in the linebacking core and secondary group. All right, this is from Todd Archer from ESPN. He's got a good report here. He originally posted Brandon Aubrey coming out for a field goal after Schottenheimer calls a timeout with 3 seconds left. This is in the first half. Why not go for it? You know what Aubrey is. He followed that up, said, asked the coach about this, said he wanted to get points, and Cowboys got the ball to open up the second half, a chance to double dip, played it more like he would in a regular season game. Yeah, we'll get more into Schottenheimer's strategies here in a second, but a lot of people are critical of this. I kind of like it because if you're trying to evaluate players, and that's what they're trying to do, they're trying to evaluate backups. They're trying to see, hey, who can make this team, who could contribute actually come regular season time. They're also trying to get guys like Joe Milton and Nate Thomas, even though he was out of the game at that point, some repetitions that would kind of mirror some action that if they got into a game. If, God forbid, Dak Prescott got hurt, which, look, he got hurt in 2020, got hurt in 2021, missed a short period of time. People forget that, the Vikings game, that Cooper Rush win, got hurt in 2022, got hurt in 2024, right? So the odds will say he's going to miss at least a game this season due to injury. Not rooting for it. I just think that's what history tells us. So you need Joe Milton to get experience and repetition if he's going to be your backup, handling 2 minutes at the end of the first half if you're getting the ball to start the second half. You want to go through those motions and get your players to go through those motions so they get real live reps going through that process. You're never going to get that in practice. I always hate when coaches treat training camp differently than the way they would a regular season. We saw this at the end, for example, of the Bears-Dolphins preseason game where it was tied at 24 with 3 seconds left, and I believe it was the Dolphins that were backed up at their own 40, too far to throw a Hail Mary, nowhere near field goal range. So a lot of teams in that situation, they kneel and play for overtime. There's no overtime preseason, so what do the Dolphins do? They run a crazy lateral play. It doesn't end up scoring. Could have been a fumble or something like that. And you would never call that in a regular season game in that situation. You play for overtime. So teach your players how you want them to play during the preseason, even if it's preseason. I hate when coaches take that different approach because you're teaching bad habits or teaching your coaching staff bad habits. Bill Belichick always used to do this so well. Andy Reid does it well as well. Even when this time with Philly, he did a great job of this. Situations matter. Teach your players down to the lowest practice squad guy, to the cut guy, to your coaches. Right? That's the other thing. You're training your coaches how to handle situations. And this is an example here with the Dallas Cowboys and Schottenheimer. I actually think they took the right approach. I like what Schotty did here. All right, this next is from Nick Harris at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Great follow on Twitter or X. You should check him out if you're looking for some good Cowboys news. He's a good reporter. Cowboys offensive guard Tyler Booker is the only first-round pick to be a healthy scratch in week 1 of the preseason. Only Mykel Williams with his knee and Maxwell Hairston, also with his knee, missed due to injury. All 29 others saw action. So I think the important thing to understand here when it comes to Tyler Booker, and I like the decision to sit Tyler Booker, and here's why. If you look at who Tyler Booker is going to be playing with, none of them were going to play during this preseason game. Cooper Beebe isn't playing, right? Terrence Steele isn't playing. So why are you playing Booker, right? You want Booker to get live reps because he's going to be a day 1 starter. He's going to be, week 1, snap 1 against the Eagles, against a really, really good elite Eagles front on the road. It's going to be baptism by fire. You want him to get as many live reps as possible with the guys he's going to battle with Beebe, with Terrence Steele. You want to get all those reps, all that timing round down between those 3 guys as much as you can before week 1. Don't have Booker take live game reps when he's not with the starting center, not with the starting right tackle. This is a really smart approach. Offensive line, it's a cliche, but it is true. A lot of it's about timing, especially at guard, working with the tackles to your right, center, and side to your left, getting all that situational relationships down, right? Okay, on a double team with this guy, he gets there usually a little quicker than a double team with that guy. Timing, communication, how does the center talk in this situation? What does the right tackle talk in that situation? Going through that process, you don't want to make it too confusing for a rookie to give him live game actions with a backup right tackle and a third string center just to give him some live reps. Smart decision by the Cowboys. They're treating him as if he will be their day 1 starter, as if he is already a starter. That's the right approach to make. Now, I still want him to get some live reps during the preseason, but I want it with at least Beebe there and ideally Beebe and Terrence Steele. I like the Cowboys approach here with that. All right, moving along. This is from the DallasCowboys.com report from Tommy Yarish wrote this article. There's a lot to unpack here, so I just want to go through it all. I thought there was some good stuff. The report wrote, it was a roller coaster of an evening, which ended with Milton completing 17 of his 29 passes for $143 to go along with a touchdown and an interception. On the ground, he had 5 carries for 22 yards. The interception came on a deep ball intended for Ryan Flournoy, but was thrown in double coverage and will serve as a learning moment for the young quarterback. 2nd and 4, he's got to check it down in front of him. Ultra competitive. He's moving left and threw it up there. Schottenheimer said. Now he's trusting Flournoy in that situation to make a play, but I think that's one of those things that when Joe watches, he'll be like, yeah, I probably should have taken a check down. While it wasn't Milton's best day, it's these type of situations and moments that are so vital for him as he ramps up for his first year in Dallas. That's why he needs to play. Schottenheimer said, I think he settled down. I think he found his rhythm late, started using his legs a little bit better. Again, terrific talent that every rep he's going to help him become a great pro. Yeah, and this is why you play Joe Milton a lot. This is why you treat it like a regular season game, Schottenheimer's approach with Milton. And we'll get more into that in a second. Because you want Joe Milton, if he's your backup, he probably will play meaningful snaps. He'll probably start, again, if past his prologue with Prescott's injuries, sometime this season. You want him to get meaningful reps. You want him to go through the process of what it's like to be the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. That's why they let him cut it loose so early. That's why they were running a lot of stuff where people are like, man, that looks kind of funky, right? They didn't run the 6 straight passes to start the game or whatever it was. They were trying to do everything they could to get Milton prepared, and it's the right approach to take because this is the same. They're basically treating Milton the way you would treat, even tougher, totally honest. Like if you look at teams with their young rookie quarterbacks they're playing, a lot of it's with kid gloves. We want to build the confidence. They're trying to get those young rookie quarterbacks ready without destroying their confidence. The Cowboys are like, listen, man, we got you into the fold. You should be confident because we acquired you. Now's the time you got to execute. We're going to make it really hard for you. We're going to treat you seriously. And look, Milton didn't step up. It was a rough day for him, undeniably so. But again, if this is a learning moment process to get him ready to play significant reps this season, again, not rooting for it, but Prescott has been hurt. Again, right approach to take from the coaching staff. It's the preseason. You want to get all these kinks out now. You want to get all these issues resolved now. Figure out what your players are good at and not, because there will be a time, more likely than not, that Milton will play meaningful reps for Dallas in 2025, maybe beyond. You got to get him ready. All right, next from the same report there. From an operational perspective, Schottenheimer said leading up to the game that they'd be playing fairly vanilla in terms of play calls and schemes. That was the case, and he handled different scenarios differently in order to practice communication with his staff, like when he decided to take a field goal before the first half ended instead of letting his offense go for it. I thought the communication was good, Schottenheimer said. We played some of these situations like a real game because I needed to work these situations with my staff and decision-making and things like that. And there were other ones that we played like preseason. There were a few times we probably would have onside kicks and done things like that. So again, at the end of the game when Dallas scored, right, they probably would have kicked a couple onside kicks. Not going to do that during the preseason. But it goes back to the original report. Like we talk about getting these players involved, these young guys to evaluate, treat it, get them ready for a regular season, treat preseason like the regular season, training your staff. It's a new staff, some college guys, working those communications. Hey, it's 2 minutes. How are we communicating, right? Who's the guy up in the press box communicating down the field? How are we handling the situation? All right, we're going offense. Going for it? No, field goal on the team. Can we get the entire special teams group, everyone lined up without issues? This is one of those things that preseason should be used for, especially with new staffs. When you see issues with communications and things with new staffs and new coaches during the regular season, I think a lot of it comes down to a misapplication of time and resources during the preseason. The preseason is as much for the coaches as it is for the players. Hey, how do we handle this situation? Who's talking to who? All right, third down. Who's getting special teams ready? How are we getting our young guys? How we sit down the sideline, going over film and getting ready for the next sequence? Okay, turnover on the field, offense back on the field. Okay, how do you handle that as a coach? Who's communicating that? When is it time to challenge? How fast do we challenge? All of those mechanics. Use the preseason to work it out. I like that Schottenheimer's doing that. Again, making smart moves. Don't know if they'll work out. Could work out great for Dallas, could work out terribly, but you cannot deny that he's got a strategy and he's executing it. All right, to wrap up that report there, talking about the game, it's definitely not a storybook beginning, that's for sure. We just struggled. I think it was 25 plays to 6 at one point. That's obviously not a great way to start. They converted some fourth downs and they control the ball. From there, Schottenheimer feels like his team settled into the game more than they did in the offset, but still had one too many penalties for his liking and couldn't overcome the Rams' lead in the second half. I like the way we battled in the second half, Schottenheimer said. I thought Phil Maffa, again, calling out Maffa here, that's very important. Like, he didn't call out a lot of players specifically, but he said, I thought Phil Maffa ran really hard. I thought that was good. I love the defense in the first half in terms of run stoppage. I think that's a shout out to Maris Leofau, who was very high on as well. I think it's very clear he looked at Leofau, looked at Ezraku, and maybe some other guys as well, and said, listen, what they did in the run game was really good, and I think that's very important. We just got to get off the field on fourth down. I told the guys, hey, they competed hard, but it's not about competing. It's about execution. Yeah, that's the right mindset, right? You want these young players in the preseason to sit there and say, yeah, you guys competed hard. Now clean it up. Get better. These are these guys' first preseason game, first NFL game for a lot of these things. First game at the very least with a new staff, new scheme. Rams, like I talked about yesterday, they've had this culture in place for almost a decade at this point. There's going to be a lot of flying around, a lot of confusion. Now it's about cleaning it up for the guys that are going to make their team and contribute. I love the shout out to Phil Maffa here. Phil Maffa is going to play significant reps for Dallas this year. I think Deuce Vaughn isn't going to make the team, or if he is going to be a practice squad guy. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. I think we look at Williams. I think we look at Blue. And I think we look at Maffa and Lipke as the fullback. That's my gut feeling right now. We'll have to see how it all shakes out. But the fact right here that Schottenheimer called out Maffa specifically by name, one of the few times he did that anytime throughout this the preseason, after the follow-up from this preseason game, he called out Trayshawn Holden, the undrafted wide receiver, that said, listen, he's moving up the depth chart. He called out Zion Childress. He called out Maris Leofau. And the fact that he called out Phil Maffa, like, okay, this is a guy that's moving up the depth chart in Dallas. Definitely a guy to keep an eye on here. Maffa getting more reps, becoming a key part of this Cowboys offense, probably during the regular season as well. All right, that's all the news as we get ready for this upcoming preseason game and some more practice. There'll be more stuff to talk about over the week. Let's get into the comments from yesterday. There was a lot of really interesting ones. This first one here is from Carmick Patina. Posted, I was thinking Milton might be a project quarterback until he failed to get the first down on the scramble. Talking about there's a fourth down run where he could have easily gotten the first down. I don't say easily, but could have gotten the first down. It was kind of loose with the football. And when he crossed out of bounds, the ball was kind of behind him, and he didn't get the first down. Just very dumb situational awareness on Milton's part. That was the straw. The post goes on to say, that was the straw. He's not going to play in the NFL. Write it down in 1-inch letters. I mean, yeah, he had a terrible game. But let's be totally honest here. There's been a lot of quarterbacks that have had terrible games. Tom Brady's had 4 interception games, right? His first game, I believe, in 2003, the Patriots lost to the Buffalo Bills 31-0, and Brady threw 3 or 4 picks, I believe. They went on to go 14-2 and win the Super Bowl that year. And of course, we know what the Patriots and Tom Brady went on to become just historically. Now, I'm not saying Milton's at that level, but let's not bury a guy after one game. There were some very serious concerns and red flags. We all saw him. Let's see more. He's reportedly had a good camp. Again, he's a developmental guy, right? That's one of the things you bring him in. You didn't bring him in to be the starter this year. He's not the guy to push Dak Prescott week 1 against Philadelphia, right? He's a developmental guy. Let's see him develop. This is from Black Nat Geo. The Andrew Booth saga should have ended in Dallas last season. He peaked at Clemson. I agree. This Captain Comeback 2023. Good callback to Roger Staubach. Always like to see that. I don't get why they're playing Malik at running back when they already know he's an NFL-proven running back. I think they should have given most of those carries to backup running backs like Maffa. The only point I can make there is that at that point in the game, they'd already seen enough out of Maffa, and they're like, okay, we like what he's doing. Now we want to evaluate other players. And you can't really evaluate everybody at once if you've got just chaos. So if you bring in an undrafted rookie in that situation, instead of a guy like Malik Davis, you're throwing him into the game, and let's say he doesn't know the schemes, he doesn't know pass protection, he doesn't know the running schemes. How do you evaluate the offensive line? How do you evaluate pass protection if you've got a running back in there who doesn't know what he's doing? So you bring in Malik Davis so you can evaluate other players as well, because he can function as an NFL runner. So it's one of those things. I think after Phil Maffa and of course after Deuce Vaughn, they probably just didn't feel like they could evaluate effectively other players on the offense without having a guy who knew what he was doing in the running back position. I think that's what we saw there with Malik Davis. It's the example of a veteran camp body. You bring these guys in all the time. You see this during the regular season as well when teams will hire veterans or bring on veterans, practice squad. Maybe they get elevated for a game or two. The only reason you have them is that if you need them for whatever reason, not to have a significant playing role, but you have someone who knows how to play the position, who won't be a disaster. And I think that's kind of what we saw from Malik Davis. They put him in the game because they knew he can play. We all know he can play football. He's an NFL running back. The question is, would he be good enough to evaluate other players on that field at the time? And he certainly was. We could take a look at other offensive linemen, other schemes. That's why you play him instead of an undrafted free agent guy that you just bring in off the street a week ago, because he would probably be all over the map. It'd be tough to evaluate other positions. At Mighty Eye 4624 posted, some guys just move like they belong. Flournoy and Holden move like they belong. I 100% agree, right? That's one of the things about preseason. You can see what guys look like they're separate from the pack. They look like NFL guys. Ezraku looked like an NFL guy. Leofau, we already know he's an NFL guy, but he looked really good. Childress looked pretty good, right? You brought up Holden, Flournoy. They look like NFL guys. I thought with Flournoy every preseason, the guy just gets open and makes plays, even though he didn't get a lot of opportunities because Milton kind of left him out, hung out to dry. But both of those guys look like NFL guys, right? And Phil Maffa look like an NFL guy. That's one of the things you can use preseason for. Which rookies, undrafted guys, who looks like NFL bodies? And that's what we saw from those guys. I agree 100%. This is from at S Johnston 1487. Can you take a flamethrower, move to third string in 2025, and convert him to throw with arc and accuracy on his critical plays, or the odds out of reality? Interior defensive line play continues to look bad. Look, we know the interior defensive line is the weakness of the team, right? We just know that's not going to change, right? Oso Digizua played on this defensive line last year. He's coming back as a starter, right? They added in Solomon Thomas as depth. You got Perry and Winfrey. Mozzie Davis is on his way out. You've got Jay Toya, a rookie who was, rookie first performance, not great in the preseason in his own right. We'll see if he hopefully continues to get better. I think defensive tackle, nose tackle, they're just bad, right? And look, there are weaknesses on every team. They're just right now really bad at nose tackle, defensive tackle. I think my one, I'll say, concern that I have with Dallas, and I get you can only have so many bites of the apple, but it was like, did you really want to give Mozzie Smith one more year to see if he could do it, right? I think they came into this season, the coaching staff, the front office, and the Eberflus and his team said, he's a first-round talent, right? Even if we can just get him to play a little bit better, it'll be at least good enough. And he just isn't. He just isn't. You talk about a bust. We see this with quarterback play all the time, right? A guy looks like a bust. You bring a new coaching staff, and they try to save him, and it doesn't work out. That's what we're seeing with Mozzie Smith. Again, use a first-round pick on a guy. It just isn't working out. Defensive tackle, certainly interior, is a problem. It's the biggest weakness on the team, and it's a really, really gaping weakness. It's a serious issue. Himmlow 7494. When is the last time the Cowboys backups look better than their opponents' backups in a preseason game? I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. Right? We're not. It's the backups aren't playing the backups when the games matter. Right? The Cowboys are a very top-heavy roster. We know that. Of course, we know that going into it. The Cowboys are going to go as Dak Prescott goes, as CeeDee Lamb goes, as Pickens goes, as Parsons go, right? As Oso Digizua goes, right? They're going to, as Deron Bland goes, keep going down the list, right? They're going to go Tyler Smith, right? They're going to go as those guys go. They're stars, they're top heavy, so I don't really care about the backups, right? Again, and no one should, no one cares, right? If I don't care if my third string left guard is better than your third string left guard, because that doesn't win you football games when it really matters, right? So I think it's tough during the preseason. You want to see better performance just because it's guys wearing Cowboys uniforms, but take it with a grain of salt, right? I remember a few years ago when the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think it was Urban Meyer's year with them and Trevor Lawrence, and they were just a disaster, a dumpster fire, and they carved up Dallas in one preseason game. And it was people were a little concerned, like, oh my goodness, the Dallas secondary depth looks terrible. Oh my goodness, they get carved up by Jacksonville. And Jacksonville was atrocious during the regular season, and Dallas won 12 games. So again, grain of salt right there. I'm not saying Dallas's defense will be good. They've got some very serious issues. The September is going to be an ugly month defensively, and that may carry over beyond that. It's going to be tough. You're going to have to really find a way to grind through it. That's just my prediction at this point. But again, who cares if backups are better than backups? It doesn't really matter. This is from Dan DeTola talking about verbal agreement versus nonverbal agreement, Micah Parsons stuff. He posted, verbal is binding at lower value deals with less sophistication. For example, Joe will mow your lawn once a week for $40. I would take that, Joe, if you're available. When a deal of that, by the way, has anyone noticed that things like that just get more and more expensive? I feel like everything's just jacking up those services. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, when a deal of that magnitude is being made, it has to be on paper due to intricacies and plethora of other items to be contained in the final agreement. No court nor the union would ever enforce a verbal understanding on a player contract. He could have even signed a memorandum of understanding saying that both parties agreed to $200 million all guaranteed, $120 million signing bonus for 5 years. And even with that on paper, it could be backed out from either party if, like in the case of Randy Gregory, one party doesn't like a clause added to the final deal. It's just bad form to agree and then to crawfish later. Yeah, I think you bring up a great point there. I don't know if Jerry Jones, I think he viewed it more as just a personal thing, right? I feel like a lot of these businessmen, and if people have different experiences, put them in the comment section below. I feel like a lot of them, they do business, they do deals, and then they hand it over to the lawyers to iron out the intricacies later, right? I think that's just how they operate, and maybe it's a generational thing. They agree to terms, they shake hands or whatever, and then they walk away and they say, all right, lawyers, figure it out. So they agree on like the high level, the framework, and the lawyers come in, and maybe there's a sticking point and there's issues later with finer points. But when you agree on a framework of a deal and then to completely change the framework, that seems to be the vibe that Jerry Jones is at least trying to say. I think just culturally from his generation, he just doesn't like that. Now, that's right or wrong. That's just what he does. And I think that's something that him and the Parsons camp are going to have to figure out. Also, Dan Toll also commented, in your opinion, should we play into the starting 22 in a preseason game? I think we should, play them in the first half of the next game, but I'm having doubts with the injuries piling up. So I would always err on the side of not playing players, right? Because you never want, for example, this is the comment, do you want your starting quarterback to play with a backup offensive lineman, right? Of course not. So, but look at other positions. Would you want your backup, in this case, your starting guard, to be playing time with a backup center or backup tackle? Right? That's why they sent Tyler Booker. That being said, it probably would be good because you have a new coaching staff, new scheme, to have every coach has a different, people don't talk about this, but the process, the warm-ups, the procedures, how you get ready for a game, just go through that process. Maybe one home game, one away game, just have your starters play, a couple reps, ideally with the home game, maybe you go the road game, depending how it all shakes out, just to get used to the routine of a game with a new coaching staff. I think that would be important. In terms of getting ready to play, I always think that doesn't really matter, right? College teams don't play preseason, and a lot of them start just fine, especially in today's modern college game, which is essentially like minor league football before it's all said and done. I'm usually against playing starters, but it is a new coaching staff. I'd like to see starters maybe play a couple snaps, maybe a series, just to get used to routines and things like that. Roy Williams, 36-16, very concerned about one tech in our run defense. Very concerned, as you should be. It looks quite terrible. The running back, this is from Junior Third, 79-52. The running back room should be Blue, Williams, and Maffa. I agree. Let's see here. This is from Art Vanderlay, 69-74. Based on last night, Milton isn't even ahead of Greer. Never mind the errant throws. The play when he ran in bounds on fourth down without gaining the necessary yardage for a first down was a massive brain cramp. Yeah, I mean, he didn't look good. But again, he's a developmental guy. Let him develop. This is from Billy Collects. I know fans are saying they should have kept Lance over trading for Milton, but I think you would end up with the same results if Dak were to be injured for an extended time again. But the big difference is that Milton is on a cheap rookie contract, and Lance signed a decent contract with the Chargers. They should have paid way more to keep Lance, and let's face it, if Dak suffers a season-ending injury again, they're cooked. So I think it made sense to give Milton a shot to see if he can at least be a decent backup. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Tom Moore, the famous offensive coordinator for the Colts, and Peyton Manning, was asked during practice and stuff why he never gave the backup quarterbacks reps, like game week practice, all that stuff. It was always Peyton Manning get every reps. And he always said, if 18 goes down, if Peyton Manning gets hurt, if 18 goes down, we're effed, and we don't practice effed. If Dak Prescott gets season-ending injury again, the Cowboys are effed. Right. So again, the emphasis on the backup quarterback is just finding a guy that you can maybe develop to be a solid backup, but it's not the priority of this team. I think the focus on Milton's performance, he's a developmental guy. Let's keep it on that. Art Vanderlay, this is one of my favorite comments. The Cowboys would be better off placing orange cones on the field over Andrew Booth. Maybe a receiver will trip over them and they'll actually get a stop. The data may support that. Let's see here. Let's see if there's a lot of stuff here about the same kind of theme there, talking about just saying preseason. This is from Dancing Rock. He said, no, preseason doesn't prove anything. Dallas did go 12-5 3 years in a row. Preseason is all about evaluation. I agree. Like I say all the time, focus on individual players, not units or team performance. A few people asking about Trayshawn Holden, number 7, saying that it doesn't Trayvon Diggs wear number 7. Yeah, he'll get a different number at the end of training camp. You have to remember, if he makes a team, you have to remember there's a final 53, but during training camp, it's like 90 bodies, right? So you only have so many jersey numbers, right? You're capped at 1 to 90, or I guess 0 to 99 now these days. So again, during training camp, preseason, they're a lot more loose with it. Once you would get into the regular season, people would get new numbers if you make the team. That happens all the time. That's what would happen with Trayshawn Holden. Speaking of Trayshawn Holden, this is a good comment from Thomas FM6TT. He said Trayshawn Holden is going to become our legit number 3 receiver, and Tolbert and Flournoy will fight it out for number 4. But Holden is going to be special. Just watch how good and consistent. He's a very smart player as well, and good down the sideline. Big body too. Will be a great red zone threat. It's very interesting that the Cowboys are very excited about him. I do think there's a chance, if you look at the Cowboys roster structure, Flournoy, does some good things in the preseason, but Tolbert has been okay. Mingo hasn't done anything yet in his time with Dallas. There's a real opportunity for that number 3 spot. Now, I do think Tolbert, Mingo are probably going to get it just because of their experience. But if some of these other guys step up and earn playing time, there's a chance they work their way into that kind of position. Holden is definitely a guy to keep an eye on for sure. Just that there's a lot of anti Andrew Booth posting, which is pretty funny because he had a rough day and he's had a rough Dallas Cowboys career. All right, that's all the comments to get through today. A lot of interesting stuff. Look, we're getting ready for the second preseason game. I think in summary, the young guys that played, there's a lot of guys that stepped up. Zion Childress looks like the steal of the offseason, steal of the draft. Definitely got to keep an eye on. Leofau continues to get better. Year 2 breakout does seem to be incoming, like Ezaraku. Film review coming shortly on him, so make sure you stay tuned for that. We'll see how the Cowboys do as they get ready for the next preseason game, next part of the evaluation process. Schottenheimer so far, look, I like his approach. I think the way he's going about it is right. We'll have to see how the execution goes, right? I think the strategy is good. Big question marks on the execution. Time will tell on that. But until next time, I'm Nick, and this has been Saturday Morning Inspection.